Hello everyone, I'm Elise, also known as Another Truth here on YouTube. I hope everyone is well. Today I'm going to be discussing a recent Instagram post, which has since been dirty deleted after she received quite a bit of backlash from it. My focus will not only be on the content of the post itself, but on some of the concerning issues surrounding potential plagiarism, as well as an odd edit she made after receiving significant backlash. Now, before I dive in, please note that there will be strict content warning for this video, as I'll be discussing some political matters related to Katie Joy's statements. This conversation will largely center around Katie Joy's apparent attempt to portray herself as an ally, particularly concerning the voices and needs of marginalized and targeted groups. Earlier this week, I expressed some strong opinions regarding these issues, and I stand by those views. While I understand the situation is more complex than it may appear at first glance, the focus of today's discussion will be on Katie Joy's inconsistent positions and her seeming detachment from important social issues, especially when it doesn't support her ever-changing narratives for the almighty coin. To start, I'll be looking at the original post that Katie posted, though I'm unable to identify the original author of it. Some Reddit users, particularly those in the WOACB subreddit, believe that she may have taken this content from another social media platform, merely rearranging some of the phrases to make it appear as though it were her own. This is quite interesting, as it would present a stark contrast to the political statements she made a few months ago back in July, and how she purports herself as this responsible journalist. At the time, Katie's views seemed far more aligned with certain political ideologies, which now to be inconsistent with her current messaging. I do believe people change their perspectives based on what's going on, but it's clear that Katie's playing both sides of the fence, playing with people's minds and disengaging with the stuff that's going on and lying about it to boot. There are clear discrepancies in her rhetoric, and it's becoming increasingly evident that her attempts to malign others are contributing to her losing support from people on both sides of the political spectrum. I'm aware that my own opinions have led to a loss of subscribers and possibly some respect from former followers, but I also stand by what I think. I've always said that no one is obligated to listen to my content or to subscribe to my channel. I respect everyone's right to make their own informed decisions, but I also have that right to speak up, speak out, and criticize regardless of any pressure to avoid speaking out on certain topics or tiptoeing around specific groups. In this video, I will highlight the contradictions in Katie Joy's statements and her strange edits, as I've stated before, particularly after facing criticism from the very people she claims to support once again. Anyway, this shift in her behavior alongside her questionable attempts at political commentary is really worth examining, but it's also laughable. Well, I'll be offering some insights from a left-wing perspective, something I fully acknowledge I'm still learning about, even with relation to social justice. I believe it's important to address some of these issues head on. I'm sure some of you will be offended by my views, and I may lose subscribers, as I mentioned before. I will keep my commitment to analyzing Katie Joy's actions and words in future videos whenever that's possible in a thoughtful, transparent way. I appreciate your time and engagement, and I completely understand if you decide to bow out at this point. Thanks for listening. This is the original post I mentioned earlier. I do not know who originally authored this, whether it was Katie Joy or another content creator. I'm guessing on another platform. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm going to read that, and then I'm going to compare this to Katie Joy's response. And by the way, this original post and Katie Joy's response post were put together in that post. So it was side by side, so you could see that there were inconsistencies. I don't see where she said that she had gotten this original post from or anything. She had made some edits, I guess. So I'm just going to read this. I'm not going to react to this, but I will react to Katie Joy's response. Some question why the Democrats lost the election. As a lifetime Democrat, I know why we lost. The party is amplifying issues that aren't relevant to the day-to-day lives of most American citizens. Focusing on foreign policy, war, and human rights issues abroad doesn't speak to the average family like mine that is dealing with increased prices due to out-of-control inflation, out-of-control housing prices, and job insecurity in an unstable economy. I stopped watching news about the elections because I grew tired of fear-mongering about democracy at stake. This country has withstood worse times than now, and our democracy has never fallen to an authoritarian leader. Trump's second term won't topple democracy. The party cried foul against Trump's rhetoric, but uses the same rhetoric to incite fear and panic in the voters. Democrats don't know who they are anymore, and this party doesn't represent me. Neither party represents me. Something needs to change. Now, this appears to be the original posting of her plagiarized material. Okay, this is before the strange edit that I'll show you afterwards. I will not be reacting to this particular post. I'm going to do it on the second post because then you will see where I'm coming from, because I'm more or less going in order of how I think some of these things came about. So without a crystal ball states, I refuse to live in fear. Democrats need to stop inciting fear by overblowing the issue that our democracy is at stake. The United States has been a country since 1776. We have faced harsher and more difficult periods in history than now. At no time has any president ever become a dictator, and this won't happen now. Trump is elected for his second term. He will finish his second term. In 2028, the U.S. citizens will elect a new president to replace him. Trump will be 82 and will not serve more than 2 terms. I no longer identify with the Democrats because the platform that they ran on doesn't speak to the challenges my family faces daily. We will get through the next 4 years and life will go on. I won't live in fear, but I will continue to worry about the massive grocery bills we pay for each week. These are some of the comments that I believe happened right after that original unedited version of her plagiarized commentary. So this commentator said, what about women's rights? What about raising minimum wage? What about improving health care? What about assistance with buying your first home? What about $6,000 with the birth of a child? What about keeping a board of education instead of losing it? The list goes on. What did you think she didn't address in referring to Katie Joy's thoughts that the original candidate did not do anything, that the Democrat candidate didn't do anything, did not propose anything, that nothing was talked about? And it goes to show you how much Katie Joy did not pay attention to both sides of what was going on here. I'm not surprised. Katie Joy is trying to stay relevant, and she lacks the integrity and the insight to care about these things, to talk about these things in a way that's meaningful. And the next comment here, hate won this election, plain and simple. I wish it were that plain and simple, but I'm going to give my thoughts on the next piece, the edited version. This is the edited version of her original plagiarized response. And this was after somebody handed her ass back to her. So you will see that difference in the next part. Now, I'm going to be reacting to this with my own perspectives, and it will be political, uncomfortable discussions. So this is your chance to bow out if you don't want to listen to it. So without a crystal ball, I refuse to live in fear. Democrats need to stop inciting fear by overblowing the issue that our democracy is at stake. Trump said himself we won't have to worry about another election. We won't have to worry about it, voting again. Okay. That wasn't some dumb slip up of his. That was very intentional. Okay. His wish is to consolidate power, abolish different departments, ruin the checks and balances that we all need, regardless of who we are. And this Trump party, this Trump progression, it's not going to help Black men or the Hispanic men who overwhelmingly voted for him. It's not going to help more than 50% of the white women who voted for him, because in their eyes, it's just fine that he's going to protect women whether they like it or not. If that is not rape, cringy fuck rot, I don't know what is. What does she thinks that is? What is she doing here? What is Katie Joy thinking here? Democracy is tough. Sometimes it's unfair. It's slow moving because you just can't come out and decide, well, this is what's going to happen and that's it. There has to be a process, and the process takes a long time. I'm learning that in my own work, my own unpaid work as my committee work. Okay? It is difficult. Now, Trump's election will ensure that our status, which is already bad, will get worse. We are kind of low on the bar of what we provide citizens as far as accessible and safe health care, food accessibility, housing accessibility, affordable housing, social safety nets, safety and protection for people in general. Most critically, well, all of them, these are all critically important issues, is the reproductive justice that Katie Joy added in later on in this. And I am going to talk about that at great length, because that part she adds at the end of this was in reaction to what someone else said without having the respect of what that means. I will continue. The United States has been a country since 1776. We have faced harsher and more difficult periods in history than now. At no time has any president ever become a dictator, and this won't happen. Really? He will have unyielding power. At this point, President Biden has that power. Now, President Biden will probably be, responsible and not act on that, but Trump will. Trump will make that a point to consolidate power, destroy the checks and balances that we need to ensure that power is checked, and that he is going to obliterate, out of revenge, out of selfishness, to take away the things that you all have worked so hard for. And if you think it's not going to happen to you because you think you're in a specialized class, he will come for you. You're not one of them. I don't care how privileged you are. He's coming for it. And of course, people who are most targeted and most vulnerable are going to suffer even worse. Personally, I'm getting so sick and tired of hearing people say, well, I have this inordinate amount of privilege and I can't stand to see people go through and suffer this. Well, if they really cared, they would get up off their ass and do something. In my opinion, they would have done it already. This is the same kind of rhetoric I saw in 2016. Well, I'm going to be okay, but other people aren't. Okay? No. Then we got slammed with a pandemic, right? And because of Trump's mismanagement and deliberate negligence, over 400,000 people died of COVID, some of whom were his supporters and voted for him. So yes, that his mission, whether it actually gets done or not, I think it will, is going to ruin your life as much as it'll ruin mine. But at least I didn't vote for him. That doesn't mean anything, because everybody deserves to have their human rights and civil rights, healthcare rights, all of those things respected, regardless of how we vote or who we support, in my opinion. Trump is elected for a second term. He will finish his second term. In 2028, the U.S. citizens will elect a new president to replace him. Trump will be 82 and will not serve more than 2 terms. Well, that's not what Trump plans. If Katie Joy really looked into it, again, he plans to consolidate power. He doesn't want people to vote. His intention, now there's reality. There's the reality of the American people. But his intention is to consolidate power, destroy the Constitution, destroy whatever that we believe. And there are probably some people that are glad about that, because maybe it will bring about some equitability and equity. But the problem is, I don't want people to suffer and die, which is going to happen with these mass deportations that may not just be limited to undocumented people. And I'm scared about that for many reasons, what that symbolizes. And he's already said, he made it clear. I'll tell you, I'll give the man this. He said exactly what he's going to do. He said it demonstrates exactly who he is. No bullshit. But the thing he's not telling you is that it's going to affect you if you vote for him. If a man tells you who he is, and he shows you who he is, believe it and fucking run. Or fight, in this case. Resist. I no longer identify with the Democrats because the platform they ran on doesn't speak to the challenges my family faces daily. What challenges, Katie Joy? You have the freedom to sit on your ass all day and make content, video after video. You used to go on lives all the time. I mean, you don't show your face anymore, fine. But you get to do this for a living. Not a lot of people can. They actually have to go out to work to make sure that you have clean water, that the environment is safe for you, that people come to fix your house when you decide to repair it. People, I don't know how your garbage system works, if someone comes to pick up your garbage or you throw it away, but someone still has to process that. They have to do the plumbing. All the things like, with we're in the middle of a climate emergency. There are people working hard to try to protect that away from Trump so we don't get into these weather calamities and these other calamities that's going to destroy the health of the country and of people who live in it. You have no idea what's going on in the world, Katie Joy. And your freedom of speech, I no longer identify with the Democrats because the platform they ran on doesn't speak to the challenges my family faces daily. You're not going to be able to say that. If Trump has its way and it becomes what I think it'll become, according to Project 2025, and how history echoes itself in this, yes, you're not going to be able to say anything other than Hail Hitler, Hail Trump. That's all you're going to be able to do. And you won't be able to run your stupid program anymore. You'll be monitored all the time. And what do you face in your challenges? You get services for your son, right? Trump has abandoned his own grandnephew. His nephew spoke out. Now, his nephew is not a leftist or a liberal, but his nephew spoke out and shared a story of something that his uncle said to him about his disabled son, that his disabled son why just let him die and come to Florida to stay with me. Let his grandnephew die instead of trying to help him. Meanwhile, his nephew raised that beautiful child into an adult who is thriving regardless of what challenges. We all face challenges. But that's how he's going to treat people with disabilities. And if your son is medically fragile, they're coming for your son, Katie Joy. And when I say that, all the services that you get will be terminated. And you'll have to find some other way of taking care of your son if they don't have plans to do worse things. We will get through the next 4 years and life will go on. A lot of people aren't going to make it. They'll either be deported, dead, lost. The life that you live now in this fantasy world, it'll be over. What are you going to do? I won't live in fear. Maybe not, maybe because you're one of them, but they'll come for you too. But I will continue to worry about the massive grocery bills we pay each week. You know why you have massive grocery bills each week? You know why it's expensive? It's because you don't fucking budget anything. You said you get $90,000 1 month of earning. Okay? You said that in that FOIA request that Nini Marie had provided to us, that audio. $90,000. So from all the time that you've made money online and AdSense and whatever, okay, all the money that you managed to scrounge, you can't afford groceries. With all the help that you get, you can't afford groceries. There are people working 2 jobs, paying exorbitant rent, and they don't even qualify for food stamps because they're like $5 over the limit. And they would probably only get $5 if they were $5 under the limit. Yet you sit on your ass, get yourself sued multiple times where you have to pay lawyers, pay this and that instead of taking care of your family. No wonder. I didn't vote for Trump, but I won't spend the next 4 years outraged about why he was elected. I will continue to care about the issues that I care about and amplify the issues that matter to me. Yes, you only amplify what affects you. You. You don't care about your family. You don't even care about your house. You don't care about your animals. You only care about exploiting this for coin. This is what you do. This is the only reason why you got into these political topics to begin with. And not only that, remember back in the summer how you had warned everybody about Project 25 and all these things you supposedly care about. Of course, I don't believe a word of it from you because you never have. You never care. I'm glad to now this is what she added in at that edit, and that was about an hour after that those comments she got, and I think it had a lot to do with that one comment that I just talked about. But there were many comments still left on that particular post in the original Instagram post. This is the kicker here. She added this afterwards. So I know this whole thing was contrived and nonsense, plagiarized crap because she was getting so much crap from people we think are Trump supporters. And now a bunch of people who thought she was Democrat left her too. Now, I don't think Katie Joy was ever a Democrat. For some reason, I thought maybe she was a registered Democrat, but actually I don't have any proof of that. I might have gotten that mixed up in my head with Colleen Ballinger, who's a registered Democrat, or was. It doesn't matter at this point because the Trump party has nothing to do with the Republican Party. So this is what the edit says. I'm glad to see that 7 more states have protected the reproductive rights of women. No, that was just an add-in to shut up her detractors. And this does not follow through with the rest of the conversation about how tired she was of living in fear. She should live in fear for if reproductive rights are over. People over 40 still get pap smears, breast exams, get treated for an array of gynecological conditions. Okay, she specifically does not care about it. She spent a great deal of time shaming people for their reproductive choices, especially the Duggar women having, an unacceptable amount of children from her perspective. Also, she railed against someone who she thought was married to Robert Shin and went on about her supposed reproductive illnesses, reproductive problems, and sexuality. She does this all the time. She doesn't care about reproductive justice. Reproductive justice isn't just about getting an abortion. And I'm pro-choice. And if a woman wants to terminate her pregnancy, so be it. If somebody wants to terminate their pregnancy, they should have access to it. Okay, but there are other things, like, and a lot of clinics provide STD screenings. They provide the medication to prevent HIV. Okay, they want to get rid of care from an obstetrician, other than to report back to the state. whether or not she's still carrying that baby. And if somebody miscarries or attempts to have an abortion on themselves or becomes sick because of lack of health care or whatever, who knows what will happen to her? They already tried that. And believe me, Nazi Germany did these forced sterilizations and abortions much in the same way that America has done through the eugenics movement. And notwithstanding the fact, if you remember the Tuskegee, the syphilis experiment or treatment, those African American men were not informed that they were being injected with syphilis. They thought they were getting injected to help them treat some other problem for something. Because some of these, I bet you all these men have never had examinations. It was a way to ruin their reproductive system. And it was a forced experiment. It went on for decades. Okay? Much like the way that Nazi Germany injected people with horrible things just to see what would happen. And there was no basis for some of this stuff. There was no medical basis for some of their experiment. It doesn't matter if someone's not consenting to it. It's not going to be beneficial, especially in Black women, especially when they were enslaved. They were experimented on. Their reproductive systems were destroyed for the sake of so-called science, without any pain medication, without a time when there wasn't antibiotics, because they didn't believe that Black people experienced pain, and that they could do whatever they wanted. It's just unbelievable. If we go back to the syphilis experiment, not only did the Black men suffer and die, but their partners did as well, and so did children born from that. Reproductive freedom is not just about abortion, it's about medical care. It's about those things, about our children being safe, because these issues are an extension of that. It's a choice that we make as in parenthood. It's having holistic treatment. When I say holistic treatment, not just the doctor saying, well, you have nerves, you can go home. Full examination, people listening to our pain. Many women are turned away, especially Black women, especially Black men. But Black women have a higher maternity rate, maternity mortality rate, and infant mortality rate in this country. That should never happen. It should never happen that when somebody is having a miscarriage, an anomalous pregnancy, an ectopic pregnancy, whatever, bleeding out in a hospital room or in their car because the doctor will not perform, because the doctor's afraid of what's going to happen to them, even though they're supposed to care and serve that person. This is what's going to happen. It will happen for Katie Joy. It will happen for the people around Katie Joy. It will happen for everybody. Everybody will be affected. Yes, some people will have the means to go fly out to another country, perhaps, and have an abortion. But that may not even be if he locks the borders here. So we have some problems coming up. And for Katie Joy to pull this crap, this nonsense, at the most critical point of our democracy, I don't know what else is. And she doesn't want to listen to these hard conversations because KJ is inherently racist and sexist. And she's classist. She doesn't give a shit about anybody else but herself. That has been her track record. And for her to go back and forth about it. She might as well go put a fucking garbage bag on herself and parade around town and show, you know, how expensive her grocery bills are. Now I'd like to address the core issue. Katie Joy's sudden political shift for clout and coin, of course. Remember just last summer, she was outspoken against Project 2025 and the GOP's intended agenda, particularly when it came to women's rights. She was all about defending certain aspects of social justice and fighting for people's rights. I did a video on her performative behavior before, because that's all she's been, a figure who uses her platform to make noise without ever taking real action to back it up. But now we're seeing her completely flip. She's abandoned the progressive values she's once claimed to support. That's her right, but let me explain. She's criticizing the Democratic Party, saying that she can't support it anymore due to what she calls massive grocery bills. And she's accusing Vice President Kamala Harris of lacking clear values or expressed plans to help American people. She also mentioned that she won't live in fear as a Democrat, which sounds nothing more than a cheap excuse to backpedal, because she was receiving criticism, and now she's receiving criticism from both ends. Here's the thing. If Katie had actually been paying attention, she would have seen that Kamala Harris has always laid out a clear, actionable plan to help working people and to help people in general. Harris has been an advocate for affordable childcare, lowering grocery bills by cracking down on price gouging, and ensuring that reproductive rights, specifically access to abortion, are protected. These are things that I have personally heard her talk about in her rallies, though I had once insinuated that I thought it was in the wrong direction of slamming Trump more than focusing on the people. But that had changed during the course of her rallies and discussions. But Katie either doesn't really care or is choosing to ignore these concrete solutions to real problems in favor of promoting her own half-baked agenda. Now, in my opinion, and some of y'all aren't going to like it, but I'm going to say it anyway, Donald Trump's track record is one of empty rhetoric and inaction. He spent years sowing division, undermining public trust and enacting policies that he did follow through on that disproportionately hurt the most vulnerable people in this country. He's not about making government work for everyone. He's about preserving the status quo for himself, where the exceptionally wealthy and powerful keep profiting while everyone else struggles. And yet, here's Katie aligning herself with Trump's supporters and parroting their talking points, despite the harm those policies have caused. Now, she hasn't come out and said that she has supported Donald Trump, and I think that even if she did, it might be closer to the truth, but I do think that she's playing everybody in this situation. It's clear that she's playing the political game for her own gain without any real concern for the people she claims to advocate for. And it's very hard to believe her with anything that she says with her concerns about the Democrat Party. And I understand that there are concerns, but she is not the expert on this, nor has she done anything authentically other than plagiarize somebody else's material, allegedly, with no real points to make on why she would leave it, because then I could say I understand. I'm not so entrenched in my own party that I would not allow myself to see everything else. Maybe I'm dogmatic with my own values because these are outside of political party. These are the things that I have to live with every day of my life. Trump's dangerous policies, a recipe for America's destruction. Trump's policies are fundamentally destructive, not just for marginalized communities, but for the very fabric of American democracy itself, as some of his less aggressive supporters believe in. His actions during his presidency and his ongoing rhetoric since leaving office have revealed a man who is more interested now in his new election in consolidating power and tearing down the institutions that make America a democracy, taking away those checks and balances that are essential in our branches of government and in its governance, than in making life better for ordinary people like you, me, Trump supporters, Harris supporters, left-wingers, anarchists. I don't care. It affects us all. Now, one of the most alarming aspects of Trump's agenda is his disregard for the health and well-being of the American people. His attempts will be to strip away health protections with the help of his cabinet to eliminate vaccinations that are necessary to keep 19th century diseases away from our children, to roll back environmental regulations, and to undermine the social safety nets will hurt, and this will hurt millions. More than that, especially Social Security, some of which Trump supporters rely on. His last administration was reckless in handling the COVID-19 pandemic, and it alone cost over 400,000 lives. And I blame it on his inaction and leadership during it. I believe he is responsible for this, as he downplayed the virus, made ethnic slurs about it, spread misinformation, and failed to implement a coherent national strategy to save the country from this horrible virus. But beyond just public health, his economic policies have disproportionately benefited the ultra-wealthy and will continue to do so in his second term, while doing absolutely fuck all to address the struggles of working-class Americans. His tax cuts, which overwhelmingly benefited the richest individuals and corporations, were nothing more than a giveaway to the elite at your expense. Meanwhile, the working people were left to deal with rising costs, stagnant wages, and increase in inequality and inequity. His refusal to acknowledge the reality of climate change and his decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement further endangered the planet's future in his first term. Now, Trump also championed a return to law and order, which in practice meant emboldening violent white supremacist groups and using law enforcement as a tool to intimidate and control marginalized communities. His dangerous rhetoric encouraged a level of division, though I always think we were divided anyway. But and his actions fostered a climate of hatred and intolerance which left people dead. He turned an eye away from the systemic racism that plagues the nation, and instead of trying to bring people together, he exploited these divides and deaths for personal gain. He has no investment in America or in American policies. He has no allegiance to America whatsoever. In the wake of the January 6th Capitol insurrection, we saw just how far Trump was willing to go to maintain his grip on power. It had nothing to do with saving America. It had everything to do with stealing votes away from people who cast them honestly and to undermine the power of the United States. His lies about a stolen election and his attempts to overthrow the democratic process showed a complete disregard for the rule of law and for the principles that this country was built upon. Trump's vision for America is one that prioritizes the interest of himself and only himself, and maybe some more rich and powerful of the highest order, while leaving everyone else to fend for themselves, even his supporters. And he doesn't care to represent his voters of color whatsoever. He just used them for a vote. He will not do anything to protect them, to save them, or give them an opportunity that America has denied them in general. That's why it was important to fight against this nasty ass bigotry so that there is a more equitable system. But again, certain parts of Caucasian America let everyone else down. Now, it's likely his policies will be fully enacted again with full revenge on anyone who dared to hold him accountable. It would mean the continued erosion of civil rights, democracy, and the basic values that America claims to uphold. I'm not going to pretend that it hasn't reached a lot of people, because it hasn't. And maybe now Americans will wake up. The hypocrisy of Katie Joy's arguments. Katie's recent post about her frustrations with rising cost of groceries and inflation comes off as disingenuous, and I have pointed that out earlier. We're talking about someone who's openly bragged about making $90,000 in a single month, someone who's bought luxury cars and designer items. So when she talks about struggling with grocery bills, it's hard to take her seriously. Most people dealing with inflation can't afford to waste money on wine, drugs, and high-end cars. Katie's complaint about inflation sounds more like a privileged rant than a legitimate concern for regular people who are struggling. What's worse is that Katie's post appears to have been borrowed from someone else, likely someone who might have been genuinely concerned about inflation but had no political agenda attached, or it was a bot, or maybe it was Katie Joy's post from another place. Who knows? The original author didn't bring up anything about women's rights or abortion. They were just talking about other struggles, which is fine, but Katie took their words, twisted them, and made it seem like she came up with the idea herself, as if she truly understands the struggles of ordinary people. She didn't. She was just exploiting someone else's content for her own gain. And as you have seen, that she edited her post after she had received comments and questioning her about that post, questioning her about the integrity of her post, typical of Katie Joy. Then she dirty deleted it. Now I want to go back to the Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, because Katie Joy said that at one time Donald Trump or the GOP was something else, and now she's saying that the Democrats didn't have any kind of agenda or something like that. So Kamala Harris and Donald Trump represent two very different approaches to leadership, especially when it comes to issues like reproductive rights and the problem with inflation and so on. Kamala Harris has been a staunch advocate for reproductive justice. That's not just for abortion, that's also for health care, the kind of health care you need for breast exams, for mammograms, for gynecological appointments, all of these things that are important, especially to women's health. She's always made it clear that decisions about abortion should be in the hands of the pregnant person, not the government. In contrast, Donald Trump has supported policies to severely restrict access to abortion, and his administration even went so far as to appoint justices to the Supreme Court who eventually helped to overturn Roe versus Wade. But let's not forget how Trump has treated disabled people, specifically his disabled grandnephew, and mocking journalists with disabilities. Trump was infamously remembered for saying that his severely disabled grandnephew should just let him go or let him die because he wasn't worth saving. He said that to his nephew's face. This callous attitude towards disability is not just appalling. It speaks to the deep-seated ableism Trump has exhibited throughout his life. And yet here's Katie Joy, someone with a medically fragile child, aligning herself with some of Trump's less direct rhetoric without seeming to care that his policies and attitudes are harmful to families like hers. Now, content creator and inappropriate comments, her harassment of a Black content creator and inappropriate comments about reproductive health, which goes along in the line that she doesn't care about democracy, that she wants everything for herself. Katie Joy's behavior has been reprehensible when it comes to how she treats other content creators. For example, she harassed a Black content creator, accusing her of stealing her content when there was no legitimate evidence to support this claim. The accusations were baseless and racially charged, and it's clear that Katie Joy went out of her way to discredit this woman because she felt threatened by her success. So she referred to her as a thief, when Katie Joy has stolen content, people's experiences, people's tragedies, and made money from that. It's a textbook example of Katie using her platform to bully and silence people who challenge her, especially when they are more competent and articulate than she is. Moreover, Katie Joy has made deeply inappropriate and lewd comments about another woman's reproductive system, which is a violation of basic decency and respect. She tried to shame this woman by making unwarranted assumptions about her reproductive health, insinuating things about her body that were none of Katie's business, just because the woman's husband is suing her. This kind of behavior speaks to Katie's tendency to cross boundaries and act in ways that are not only invasive, but are also morally corrupt. She doesn't care about privacy, respect, or the well-being of others. She just wants to create drama and control the overall narrative of the platform. Katie Joy has perfected the art of manipulating her audience. She knows exactly how to play on people's emotions, fears, and insecurities to keep them engaged, whether it's by presenting herself as an victims, stirring up political divisions, or claiming to be a champion for marginalized groups of people. She's learned how to pull the right strings to maintain her platform and her income. Alas, she's not interested in real advocacy. She's interested in maintaining herself and only herself.